So, welcome to the Healing for the Heart podcast, People Just Like Us, where we do just what it says on the tin and we speak to people just like us. We have a whole range of guests that come and appear on our podcast here. If you're listening or you're watching and you're thinking, when we get to the end, I could do that, then please do get in touch with us and we'd love to have you guests next time. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Ailsa Nicol. Ailsa and I have only met really recently, but just in the conversations that we've had, realised that there's a real synergy between where she is with her organisation and where we are with our organisation, and the kind of values and the DNA that we have. I'm really delighted to introduce Ailsa this morning. I feel like she's the most well-known guest that we've had on the podcast because she's been on the telly this week, or just in the last couple of weeks, has been guesting on STV, which is absolutely fantastic. She might tell us a bit about that later on as well. However, Ailsa, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a wee bit about yourself.
So I'm Ailsa Nicol, and I am the Services and Impact Manager for Scran Academy. My background is in children's play and encouraging communities to come together around play. When I first saw the job advert for Scran, I was very excited that they were talking about taking food out to communities and engaging teenagers back with their communities and helping them feel included as part of that. So yes, we do all kinds of employability stuff, we do all kinds of education stuff, but it's about getting young people to really know themselves and choose real options for themselves. Your teenage years are often really pivotal in you, and I think that actually a little bit of guidance and a little bit of feeling connected to your community goes a long way. As an organisation, we really believe that young people have all the answers for themselves. They just need a bit of help to pull it out, to work out what they want, to believe in themselves, and often that is just someone else believing in them. So I'm really privileged to hold the job that I do.
Fabulous. And tell us a bit about how you came into the organisation in the first place.
So I've been with the organisation 3 years. I initially applied to run their catering van. So we take our catering van to events and we do outside catering orders. We've done a wedding, done all kinds of things. So the young people go out and they deliver that service. And so they do everything from the cooking, from the being on the van, from the gas safety and the sort of logistics of it. And through doing sort of little bits of work placement, little bits of seeing themselves in a different light, they really grow and they really can imagine themselves as an adult in a kind of non-threatening environment. And from that, I just fell in love with the way the organisation works, the way they really encourage kids to explore who they are. And sometimes that's messy and chaotic, and actually just having a space to do that is really important. And so I now work across all the services, having a look and seeing how I can improve things, if there's any bits of training or any bits of support materials, gathering up connections that we need with other people. If we hit any problems and we want to refer kids to other services, that's my job. So it's the kind of glue that makes it all the unexpected bits work. And I love it. I just thrive in the environment and the sort of variety of what can come up from a day to day.
Yeah. So the Scran Academy is a youth project, a youth organisation, but it's not a youth club.
It's not a youth club, no, it's an alternative education provision. So kids who are not having a great time at school come to us 2 days a week for our core programme, and they get catering qualifications and skills, but they also do a lot of like personal social development. We also run a tutoring programme, so kids who are not having a great time focusing in school can come and have private tutoring in our space. So we take volunteers that come in, and it's as much about building the relationships and the confidence of the young people to learn as it is actually tutoring them. So it's not subject specific. You can come and you can be tutored in anything, because actually we're just holding your hand and saying, if you don't know, we don't know, we'll help, we'll work out the answers together. We also have an employability programme where young people who, I want to say it at the bit where they've left school and they don't know quite what comes next. They don't know where they're going or what they want to do. And so they're not quite ready to go into kind of, I want to say, your standard employability program that'll teach about writing CVs and teach about getting there on time, that kind of thing. Actually, they don't really know what they want to do or where they want to go. So it's a little bit about developing them, building confidence, sometimes getting re-involved in education so they can get the qualifications that they want in order to access the courses that they want. But they all come and do a work placement with us. So again, they get to see themselves actually in the workforce and doing all the jobs, often overcoming anxieties of speaking to other people or what seems like very simple experiences can be transformative for them. So we've seen real success, I want to see engagement of the young people in the services, and they keep coming back through the door. We often have young people who start in one service and then progress into the next and sort of hopefully age out, but some of them stay working with us. So we've got a whole mix of ages of young people and how involved or not involved that they are.
I sometimes think that's the real measure of success in an organisation, isn't it? When the people who are your service users actually come back to work for you, or they loop all the way back round because they've seen the benefit of it for themselves, and they're actually so passionate about it that they want to tell everybody else.
Yeah, and they do. They sing our praises. Often the first year that they work with us, they're still building that. They're still building that, and when they get to the second year, whether they've changed program or stayed in the same academy program, you really hear them notice the change that it's made. They can see their kind of wider pals or their communities and how hard they're finding it, and actually they're not, because they've got the support. They've got someone there to speak to. So yeah, they're our best advocates. They tell us
Yeah,
all about
and
it.
it's secondary school age young people that you work
Yeah,
with.
so they come to us from 14, and I would say we talk about being the Scran family, so you don't age out. We will call on you for anything. If we need support in an event or we need extra hands, we're likely to pick up the phone and say, "Can you come in? Can we borrow you? Can you come and volunteer?" And so they often come back through the door. So they don't age out. They start at 14 and they never leave.
That's fabulous. And so I wonder if you could just tell folks what your connection with Healing for the Heart is then, because obviously it's a fairly new connection. We've only recently met. So how did you get to know who we are?
So we met looking at the Stressless pack. So we're looking at sort of revamping the Stressless kit for youth workers, to ensure that it's current and up to date for young people, but also is digitized so that we can have far easier access. So we've been thinking a lot about what issues the young people face and how we might help them overcome. We've been looking kind of digging down into the detail. What is it that we already do that we can teach the young people? What skills and activities are we utilising already? And by opening up as a bigger collaborative project, it's far more effective because you've got kind of different ways you could deal with any, particularly mental health problems. But just stress as a wider thing. Maybe it's not leading quite to mental health issues, but everybody feels stress. Everybody, feels the weight of being a teenager. So actually, how do we pull that apart? How do we support? And it's been lovely to hear from a whole mix of organisations. I've gone away with wee notes, noted down, be like, oh, I want to try that. Oh, let's do this. And if I'm feeling that, I'm hoping that when you pick up the pack, that whoever opens it will feel that too.
Yeah, so and that whole stressless work is the Mental Health Foundation are leading that, and we actually have Jill on another podcast who has been heading that project up. But that really is about supporting young people's mental health. I know it's not necessarily about an intervention, but it is about support for that mental health and well-being. So I wonder if you can tell us a wee bit in terms of your experience with the young people you work with. What are some of the challenges that are there that young people are facing today with their mental health and well-being?
So
How long have you got?
yeah, I was going to say yes, all of them in some way or form. If you can think it, we've dealt with it. But there is a kind of core message of them really not feeling listened to, them not feeling like they can change the world they live in. They feel very trapped and kind of overwhelmed, and often they know exactly what they need, but they're so low in confidence that they don't know how to get it, they don't know who to ask, and it often bursts out in ways that they feel out of control, and then they're kind of stuck again in situations where they're in trouble. And so a lot of the work we do is teaching them to have a voice, that actually you can ask and you can expect help, because I think schools are completely overwhelmed right now with the mental health crisis that is facing our young people, and they just don't have the support available, to be able to provide that sort of in-depth approach. So a lot of our young people are suffering from the effects of poverty, however that looks. Sometimes it's overworked parents, so they don't see anybody, and sometimes there's just not enough money for even basics, heating and eating. So a lot of what we do is ensuring that they eat really well. So they come to us, they're offered 3 meals in the day, and nobody goes home hungry from any events. They're well fed. Often we drive them a bit mad, being like, "Are you hungry? Is there anything you need?" But they have often tuned out of whether they are hungry or not. They've often tuned out what their physical body needs, because they don't have all of the things that they require to fulfill those needs. So if they tune out, it hurts less, physically or mentally. And so a lot of our work is teaching them to be back in their bodies, to actually, if they're hungry, there will be food. If they're thirsty, there will be more things to eat. And on an absolutely basic level, how can you engage in education if your core physical needs aren't met? And so it's a lot about getting them to re-engage with their bodies and how to look after themselves.
Yep, and that's the base of Maslow's triangle, isn't it? Because you actually need to address those issues before you can actually start to address any other issues.
Yeah. We had a really interesting discussion a couple of weeks ago about Maslow's triangle, where we were teaching the young people about it and getting them to order where they would order things. And we realized that the top of that triangle was completely missing for them. None of them had aspirations to go and change the world, to change themselves. That was completely missing. And interestingly, that's the triangle where respect exists. So they were often taught young people don't respect other people, they don't respect property, they don't respect the schools. But actually, if they've never seen and experienced that for themselves, how can we ask them for that? So it was really interesting to hear from them what they thought respect was, because their description was completely different from mine. It was very much like about hierarchy, and actually they only respected people who they thought had more power than them, and everyone else was kind of below them. And it was like, we talked about core respect and how we show respect for people we don't know, and it was completely alien to them. They didn't get it because they'd never experienced it. So yeah, it taught me a lot, that you can think you know what you're talking about, but actually they're the experts. They know all about what they need.
Yeah, totally, and that makes sense to me. Then again, just from where you started there about helping young people to look after their bodies, because actually, if you don't, that's about respect for yourself, isn't it? But if you don't, if it's just a complete no frame of reference for it, then how do you even do that for yourself?
Yep. And it's a lot of what we do is kind of teaching them hypothetically, and then they try it out in sort of little small steps. And so change is very slow. When you're teaching someone about such fundamental principles, it can be very difficult. And right now we're just starting our Christmas hampers project, where the kids all design an item for the hamper, and then we sell various hampers in the run up to Christmas. And actually, it was very difficult for them initially to engage that they could be trusted to design a real product. And so there was a lot about instilling confidence in them that they can do it. Actually, they can design a product, they can make it. It is going to be real. We're not actually tricking them, pretending that it's going to happen like school does. And so it's almost like you can design the course content, but then you have to go back underneath and make it fit, make it real for them. Because yeah, they often in their world they're promised things and then they don't happen. And so they takes a while to establish the trust that we're not promising them things that they won't get. They're going to actually get the chance to make things and actually make some money that they then will get to spend on their trips or their residential programs later on. But understanding that balance of, they do a little bit of work, we do a little bit of work, and the general public will believe in us. And that's been a huge leap of faith for them, is to actually say, okay, I'll put myself out there, I'll try. We'll see if we sell, how many hampers we sell, we'll see how much money we make. And that's a huge vulnerability for them, to just say, okay, I believe in you, we'll try. Which I think people don't really understand. Like a lot of, I want to say, well-supported teenagers, they might be grumpy and they might be moody, but they do have a core belief that things will be okay. And a lot of the young people that we work with, they really don't have that core belief. They believe that adults are out to trick them in some way. And so, yeah, it's a lot about holding hands and being friends first.
Just excuse me, just because you mentioned the whole hamper thing, then if folks are watching this, because we'll put this out before Christmas, so if folks are watching this, how do they engage with that if people want to buy one?
So our hampers are available through our website, scranacademy.com. And there's two hampers. One is the Rising Star, which is I think 3 items that the young people have made, and then there's our pure legend, as named by our young people, that includes all the items that they've made. But it also includes a contribution to their Easter program and eventually to their sort of summer tour, where they'll go out in this grand van and generally show off all the skills that they've learned across the year, give back to their communities, that kind of thing. So it's initially you get a beautiful box as designed by them coming through the post. So instead of you ordering and then having to resend it, say you're sending it to relatives far away, you can give us all their details and it will arrive completely mysteriously through the post to them. If you live within the Edinburgh area, one of our young people will come out with a volunteer and hand deliver it, because we like that personal touch. We like to see what's going on. We like our young people to see the whole process, from their initial sketches right through to the delivery on the door. And yeah, they bounce and thrive around in that bit after Christmas where they've made real change and they can see it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure that we include that in the blurb at the end of the video or at the end of the podcast so that people can get in touch with you.
Oh, they'll be delighted.
Absolutely fabulous. I think you might be posting them because we've got a lot of folks over in the west, so you might not want to drive all the way over here. Although you might just do a whole round of deliveries and deliver a whole pile all at the one time. And the question that we always ask folk on this podcast is, if you had a magic wand that you could wave, that you could change something in our society that would make such a massive difference to the mental health and well-being that you see the challenges in particular, or maybe just general to mental health and well-being, then what would it be? What would you change?
I would change lots of things, but I think the thing I think would make the most immediate change to our community's mental health is if adults could stop being frightened of teenagers, if they could go straight up and have a chat and engage with them, turn off the condemnation, turn off it was never like this in my day, because it was like that in your day, you just weren't the adult, and really engage with our teenagers. I think they've got so much to say and they're so interesting. And their mental health is really suffering from a lack of adult chat, a lack of adult engagement with them, whether that's volunteers in local services or whether it's just grandparents having time to sit around and have a chat. I feel if my biggest wish for our improvement in this generation's mental health would be if adults would take a bit more time to talk and play and spend time with their young people.
Yeah, and I guess like just on the back of that, I suppose there's maybe a lot of adults who will listen to this who are actually quite fearful of doing that for a whole host of reasons. Are fearful of doing that. I'm just thinking as you were speaking there, I remember my dad, and he was talking about children in particular. So my dad was an elderly man who would always have sweeties in his pocket, and if he met somebody with a wee kid, he would give them a sweetie. And in his later years, he didn't ever do that because he was really scared that somebody would accuse him of something that he wasn't. There was no intention. He was just being nice, and so there can be a fear there in adults about engaging with children and young people. I'm not sure. I'm putting you on the spot now, but how would you come back at that? What would you say to folks?
I would say you should be far more fearful of the consequences of not. So put your hand in your pocket, offer the sweeties, just be brave, because however scared you're feeling, the teenagers are more scared. There's an awful lot of teenagers, I want to say, who dress exactly the same, to become completely anonymous. They want to disappear, and actually what they really need is to be seen. So it's not easy. It's not easy. I've got a 14-year-old myself, and sometimes when that door is shut, you're thinking, God, she really wants peace and quiet. She really doesn't. The more they've disengaged, the more they've shut themselves away, the harder they are to finding it to engage. So we as the adults need to band together, get your pal, invite your pal and their teenager around for tea, whatever it is you need to do. But for me, it's be brave. You're the grown-up. And sometimes it can be really awkward and it can be really difficult. But the young person isn't having the bad thought about the guy giving them the sweetie. That's a grown up. And the grown ups have to be able to say, I'm right here. There's nothing dodgy going on. It's just someone having a chat. But, little things, chatting to folk at the bus stop or like engaging with them, whilst you're standing waiting in a queue, all those little things just can perk somebody up. You've got a lovely coat on today. Oh, thanks very much. Those little things really change us, really make us turn around in our negative thoughts. Someone else has seen us. And I think our teenagers really need to be seen. They really need that somebody out there cares what they think and cares what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's a massive thing, isn't it? I'm just thinking how that hooks into all of the stuff that you've been saying all the way through this morning. So, even the way that the Scran Academy is set up, it's about seeing young people. It's not about doing something to them. It's actually about seeing them, seeing the need, and working with them to address whatever that need is that's there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think they live so often with told they shouldn't do this and they shouldn't do that, but often they don't know what it is that they should be doing. They haven't got enough role modeling to model. And so even just like little things like our tutoring program, it's only 2 hours a week, but we've seen a massive turnaround in the re-engagement of schools, and it's only been running a number of weeks, and they're signing up for more qualifications and they're saying I can do this and bringing more things. Actually, the tiniest bits of volunteering or just taking some time with young people makes such a difference.
Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, when I heard you speak about this just very briefly when we met before, I thought that, I caught your passion and would be as passionate as you are in terms of young people and about seeing people. It's not just young people that need to be seen, it's everybody that needs to be seen.
Yeah.
We all want to have significance, don't we? And it's about how we help each other to find that significance or to feel significant. And if we don't acknowledge that people are there, whether they're young people or whether they're adults, then in fact we haven't seen them, and so that insignificance tank, if you like, just is still empty. We're not filling the significance tank up at all.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our young people, or I guess young people as a whole, there's bits built into the school system or to whatever for praise and for recognition. I think a lot of our young people have stepped away from that. They don't feel like they'll ever be the top of the class, or they'll ever be the one who did really well in their exams. There'll always be someone who was better. And so they've almost pulled themselves back from it. But if you can celebrate those little successes, you managed today, you got yourself up, you came in even when you didn't want to. You had a healthy breakfast when you could have had chocolate croissants. Those little things that if somebody's noticing, you're making the effort. You build on that. You make those little steps. And what starts as tiny pieces of self-care, suddenly you're making breakfast for everybody and saying, this is the right one, come and do this, because you've been seen and therefore you want to share that with other people. You want to...
It's that snowball effect, isn't
Yeah.
it? You start little, and as it rolls, it gathers, and it becomes much, much, much bigger. And I suppose, going back to your waving a magic wand thing in an adult scene or engaging with a young person, that's like the tiny snowball. So one person engages with one young person, and that young person's like, I'm seen and I'm actually okay, and I had that conversation and it was okay. I could do that, and I held my own, and nobody shouted at me, and nobody told me I was wrong, and it almost starts to undo some of those thinking patterns that are there for folks as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. How they think about themselves changes completely.
Yeah.
You made me really think of one wonderful young woman I worked with 2 years ago, and when she initially came to us, she didn't speak to anybody. No, she had a best pal, and they whispered in the corner, and they really didn't engage with anybody. And over the two and a bit years that she's worked with us, she went last week to present to a panel to engage us with us being the charity of a year, and she had to stand up for 10 minutes and talk all about the organisation. And honestly, I felt like proud mother hen. Like she's gone all the way from I won't talk to anybody to a little bit of belief and a little bit of belief. Now it's taken 2 years. It's not like overnight she just believed in us, but now she is re-engaged with school. She's training to be a nurse, and she's saying I can do anything. I didn't think I could do anything, but you guys believed in me, and that made it possible for me to believe in myself. And she's just built on it and built on it, and each month. And it's just one story in many, but that tiny bit of someone believing in you, showing up for you each week, showing up and saying you can do this. Come and I'll show you. Come on, we'll learn to do it together. Just makes such a difference.
Yeah. And it's those tiny incremental steps, isn't it? Because sometimes we're looking for the sudden overnight big change. All of us are, whether we're adults or young people. But it's those tiny incremental steps that before we know where we are, we don't even realise that we've come so far till we look back and see where it was we started.
Yep.
And then we suddenly realise, where we've actually got to.
Yeah.
The stories, I'm sure we could talk for absolutely hours, because the stories just have such a lot of hope in them, which is what we would want folks listening listening to this to hear the hope that's there and the possibilities of transformation. And that's where we really share the same DNA, because we do look at people and we really believe that transformation is not just possible, but we expect it. And we often say to people, and I think it captures what you're saying as well, if you come here and you have no hope, we have enough hope for both of us,
Yep.
because we've seen this before, and we know that if we've seen it before, it can happen again.
Yep.
Which is that's a fabulous place to leave, or fabulous thought to leave ringing in people's ears at the end of this today. Ailsa, thank you so much for joining us. It is such a pleasure and a privilege to have that conversation with you. And I hope that maybe in a few months' time we get you back on again and we can tell some more stories. That would be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'll tell you all about how the hampers went, and maybe
Yeah,
we'll get voices of the young people about how it.
And meantime, we will stick the details on the show notes for this. But if folks, I would say to folks who are watching or listening to this, if you engage with the Scran Academy and you buy a hamper, take a picture, stick it on social media, and tag us both in it, and we'll share it on our social media, because we want to make sure that we're helping these guys promote what they do as well.
I would love
Also,
that.
yeah, totally. Also, if you are watching or listening to this thinking, I want to tell people what we do because we have a really good story to share too, or you're actually just thinking about your own journey, do you know, I'm going to throw out there, maybe you're a young person listening to this, maybe you're even a young person who's engaged with the Scran Academy, and you want to come on here because you want people to hear the difference that it made and how you want it to make a difference to other people. Then you get in touch with us, and we would love to reserve a seat for you on our podcast. Come and talk to us, and come and get your message out there about positive mental health. Thank you so much, Ailsa.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been exciting.
Been absolutely amazing. And we'll catch up with everybody else next time on People Just Like Us, the Healing for the Heart podcast.
Thank you.